The eclipse has lasted for a millennium. The sun had been forgotten until one day conduction, convection and radiation realized they had no purpose in their life. This is radiation. This is conduction. And this is convection. The three young warriors had nothing to do with their life, so they decided to make their way up ahead to the Forgotten Elm's Wood, where monsters lurk and also a wise old wizard called Gandalf the Black lives. The three young warriors climbed up the hill and found an abandoned cavern. The warriors decided to wait outside the dark cavern to find nothing until they felt a cold presence before them, and Black Gandalf shimmered in the cavern reflecting the outside light, and poof, he appeared out of nowhere. The three warriors, conduction, convection and radiation, seek to find a way to bring back the lost sun which was engulfed by the darkness of the haunting moon. This was so that they could relive their lives doing meaningful things by transferring heat energy. Gandalf the Black, having consulted the black apparitions of the underworld, tells the three warriors that the sun is protected by sea spirits at the Gulf of Pandemonium, minuscule steel-balled monsters in the Brozite's forest, and an enigma in the middle of an endless black hole at the end of time. To revive the sun, all monsters must be eradicated. Upon the heath, the three warriors can see the Moonshine Mountain, where there holds the key to the sun which will provide the three warriors with endless, glorious supply of heat energy. The three young warriors first made their way through a hole in the ground into a barren place where there stretched a vast ocean, and above them stood 15 meters of earth. The Gulf of Pandemonium, one way in, one way out. All of a sudden, ghostly figures emerged out of the water. Convection knew that they were sea spirits and prepared for battle. Convection mastered a little heat energy and transferred it from one place to another by the movement of fluids, basically the water in the swamp and the dense fog in the atmosphere. The water near the heat transfer density became lower, then it traveled to the top where it's cooled, increases in density, flows back down. This caused a continuous circular movement in the water called a convection current. The heat gave the water molecules in the swamp energy. They then started to diffuse and lose density. This caused for some of the sea spirits to heat up and become steam. However, there were a few other resilient sea spirits left, and they created a dense fog which prevented heat transfer due to the humidity, high level of water vapor in the atmosphere. Nonetheless, convection knew that the Gulf of Pandemonium had two openings. He lit a fire to a nearby dead tree, which caused for the gaseous particles to become less dense because of the heat. This allowed for the dense fog to clear as hot air, less dense, rises from one shaft and cold air, more dense, enters from the other, caused by the movement of air particles, creating a convection current like the natural phenomenon the sea breeze to clear the fog. Convection tried to get rid of the rest of the sea spirits by transferring heat into the ground, but it did not work as his convection powers only worked in liquids and gases because it involves the movements of liquid particles. Therefore, to finish the rest of the last few sea spirits, he channeled a blast of air to the remaining sea spirits, which traveled in a circular movement. After wiping out the rest of the sea spirits, convection was weakened, so he had to rely on conduction and radiation for the rest of the journey. They now headed for Brozite Forest. The young warriors journeyed across miles, and they finally arrived at a dark, gloomy forest. It is the infamous Bronzite Forest. The forest was like a maze. It was easy for them to lose their way. They wandered through the forest and found themselves in an empty space. Why would there be such a big space in such a forest? They had a feeling that they were being watched. Suddenly, a shadow swooped down to them, which caught them off guard. The three young warriors stood closer together, with their backs facing one another, in the center of the empty space. Before they knew it, they were surrounded by a myriad of shadows with bright, piercing eyes shining at them. The shadowy figures emerged from the woods and revealed themselves. The young warriors' only way out of this monster house was to defeat all minuscule steel ball monsters. Conduction heated the ground with its conduction powers and made use of molecular vibration, where one end of a solid is heated. The molecules at the hot end started to vibrate more vigorously. These vibrating molecules bumped into the neighboring molecules and in the process transfers kinetic energy. The neighboring molecules gain energy and start vibrating faster. This cycle continued and the ground was heated through this process. The minuscule steel ball monsters were weakened by the hot environment. As their bodies were made of steel, heat transfer is fast and soon the monsters started to melt due to the conduction through free electron diffusion, a mechanism which only takes place in metal. Only metals have free electrons, and when a metal is heated, The free electron near to the heat source gets heated. The heat causes free electrons to move faster. The electrons travel through the minuscule steel monster's body and spreads into cooler parts of the metal. While spreading through the minuscule steel ball monster's body, they collide with other atoms or molecules and transfer their kinetic energy to these particles. This causes the collided particles to vibrate even faster, heating up the minuscule steel monsters, and they melted into liquid. The three young warriors heaved a sigh of relief, and they continued to venture into the forest. They finally made their way out as they ventured deeper into the woods to the end of time. The three warriors entered below a glowing door beneath Moonshine Mountain. The door glowed from a yellowish glow into a crimson red and exploded. They entered the stone and walked on a narrow pathway into a circular platform. Below them was emptiness. A few seconds later, the door slammed shut, and it was pitch black. Conduction, convection, and radiation were stuck in a vacuum. From the dark emptiness above, a golem Ignima dropped down, the last monster standing in their way. Unlike conduction and convection, radiation, being black in color and has a rough surface, was able to radiate heat through the vacuum in the form of waves, which blasted the Ignima golem. However, it was not enough, as the Ignima golem had a shiny white surface, which prevents himself from absorbing too much heat to flame up. The three warriors knew that it was going to take a lot more to heat and to eliminate the golem. The three of them could not hear each other because of the vacuum, but despite having the limitation of being unable to hear, they knew what to do. Convection and conduction passed the last of the heat energy to radiation to eliminate the golem. Radiation blasted tremendous hot heat waves and directed it through the golem. And the Ignima blew up into pieces of rock. Above them, the darkness started to cave down, and the three had to run out before the whole entire mountain caved in. The three ran out of the doors as they watched the path behind them break down and fall into the darkness. Yet, all three of them did not make it to the door. Above, in the starry sky, the forgotten sun started to rise on the horizon. Their journey was complete. Energy was given back to the people, and from that day onwards, society progressed to the Industrial Revolutionary Age into the Technological Age. Leaving the past behind, the legend has it that the three warriors are still working their magic around us. They should not be forgotten, just like the lost sun.